Welcome back. Good morning, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about crops that you should grow now, the top 10 crops. And this comes from years and years and years of growing food, my family growing food. And these are 10 crops that I would grow no matter what. So my top 10 crops for shit hits the fan without rule of law, completely off-grid situation. These are going to be the 10 that we grow. And as you guys will probably be able to tell from when I start listing these off, these are probably ones that you've already seen in videos. These are the 10 that we do grow. So, and we obviously, we grow other varieties as well. But if I was just limited to 10 crops, these would be the 10 crops I would grow. And the reason why this is important is because we know that we can't necessarily plan for everything. We can't grow everything, right? Because in shit hits the fan scenario where you have no access to infrastructure, no access to nothing, what you have on hand is what you have on hand. So if I could implore somebody to store seeds or to look at having a resiliency behind their preparation for gardening, these would definitely be the 10 that I would most ask you guys to, and I would implore you guys to look at. So again, if I only could grow 10 crops for the rest of my life, these would be the crops that I grow. So let's get started. Number one, apples. Now, apples are great for a lot of different reasons that we're going to get into, but most importantly and fundamentally, as you're going to see as we go along with this, I do have a very strong, like, you can even call it a bias for trees, bushes, and shrubs, and that's because they're going to grow every year. So, number one of the main reasons why I like apples is because not only is it an excellent food source, but it's a resilient off-grid food source. Meaning one mature apple tree, like our apple tree, can produce up to 200 apples a year, right? And so if you have numerous apple trees, you're looking at the ability to have hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands of apples. So that's huge. That is huge not only for your preparedness from a food source standpoint, but as you're going to see, it's huge in the commodity sense as well. So one of the biggest takeaways from apples, besides just the fact that it is a fruit that you can consume, is all the things you can do with apples. So one of the biggest things that we're going to do with our apples is apple cider vinegar, right? The ability to take this fruit and produce vinegar with it. Most people love the apple cider vinegar, especially the unpasteurized, unfiltered stuff. You can grow that and you can make that at home. So the ability to make your own organic vinegar is huge because vinegar goes well with so many different things when it comes to cooking applications, and especially when it comes to food preservation, and a lot of other stuff that we're going to get into. But the food preservation item is huge. Your ability to pickle things, right? Everything from pickles to pickled quail eggs, pickled chicken eggs, pickled duck eggs. It's huge. It's a huge food preservation multiplier. It's going to take your preparedness to the next level. And it's great because it requires minimum inputs. The tree requires minimum inputs, right? As long as those roots can dig in, get to a water source, which if it's growing and it's a mature tree, it has done that, and its ability to in your ability to make sure that it doesn't deplete the ground around it, which again, trees are a net positive for the soil around them. And so again, this is really, honestly, truly a great wonder food, right? Next thing you can do with apples is alcoholic, right? Alcoholic apple cider. That gives you something to drink, right? That gives you the ability to make your own alcohol, and it also gives you tons of commodity applications and options, right? Again, not only do you have a food, but you have now a vinegar, which gives you commodity options and preservation options. You can also make alcoholic beverages with it, which gives you more commodity options. Another thing to think about is apple pectin, right? This is used to make lots of hygiene items such as shampoos, conditioners, lotions, that kind of thing. So now you can take apples and you can make a lotion or hygiene items to keep yourself healthy. Another great thing that the apples does. Another thing that people may not know is, you can dehydrate these things down and you can make your own potpourri, right? So now you have the ability to take something that is a renewable source and you can help freshen up your home with it as well. So those are just some great options. And we're not even talking about the fact that, it's cancer fighting, fights against diabetes, fights against it has lots of other numerous health benefits. Another thing to think about is for livestock applications, right? Again, the apple cider vinegar, you could put that in livestock troughs in their water sources, and that will help as an organic natural dewormer. So now you have a way to ensure that you're taking care of the health of your animals, especially when we're talking about parasite loads. Some animals naturally will be more susceptible to parasite loads. So if you do have livestock animals or you acquire livestock animals that, for example, are not heritage breed, the chances for them to get those higher parasite loads are significant. So the ability to deworm them in a shit hits the fan scenario is huge. Apple cider vinegar will allow you to do that. Cleaning up applications, right? Your ability to clean inside of your home. Again, vinegar is a great way that you can use as a cleaner, right? So if you can't go to the store and buy a cleaner, especially for your floors and stuff like that, you have apple cider vinegar that you're growing yourself. And lastly, wound applications, whether they're for you and your livestock, huge. Again, the apple cider vinegar has so many different uses. So I highly implore you guys, apples are fundamental. We will always have apple trees wherever we go, wherever we're at. Luckily here, where we live, they are. I mean, this is where they grow. This is what this part of the country is known for. So we have access to tons of apples, and so our ability to then take that product, use it for food, and then also use it for all the other applications, whether that be as a vinegar for preservation, livestock, wound care, cleaning, huge. The alcoholic options of apples as far as, making apple cider vinegar, it's something for yourself. It's something that can be used as a commodity item as well. Huge. All the numerous health benefits, the ability to make apple pectin for other types of uses to make, homemade body wash, homemade shampoo, homemade lotions. Again, these are all things that can be made from apples, and I'm sure there's much more that I haven't even touched upon. So for us, apples are huge. I highly implore you guys to look at it, look at the applications, and see if having an apple tree or two is something that can be done in your area. All right, let's move on to our next one. Number 2, potatoes. I think most people that are into the preparedness scene already have thought about, already thinking about potatoes. Potatoes are huge. Potatoes are great. The reason why we will grow potatoes and we recommend, and I implore you to look at this as an option, is because they are really a universal staple for most people. Okay, the great thing about potatoes are each one is approximately 100 calories. So that's huge. You got your ability to load on the calories using potatoes. That's awesome. Number 2, they're especially high in vitamin C, so they can help prevent scurvy. So your ability to keep yourself healthy and not get scurvy is important, because if you're just, depending on what you're eating, as we saw with sailors and other people, throughout history, not having enough vitamin C in your system can cause you to have scurvy, and that's going to take you out of the fight. So the fact that it's high in vitamin C is good. Contains other vitamins, vitamin B6, vitamin K, riboflavin, niacin, folate, pantothenic acid, thiamine. It has lots of other vitamins and nutrients in it. People, here's another great thing. People historically have been able to eat nothing but potatoes for months without seeing any negative repercussions. Chris Voigt, he's from Washington State. He is a part of the Potato Association there, and he actually went on a diet. He ate nothing but potatoes for 2 months or so just to prove a point, and he actually lost weight and increased his health. So that's kind of funny. Potatoes are easy to store off grid, and again, they are universally paired with most meals. So Potatoes are, they're a great staple. Okay, most people like them. You can eat them just about any way you can think of. You can cut them up, you can eat them raw if you so wanted. You could put them over a fire and you can make a baked potato. You can cut them individually, put them in a little bit of fat, and you can make French fries out of them. You can cut them up and put them in soups. I mean, universally, you can put potatoes in just about anything. So that it's a great way to get some, macro, micronutrients. It's a great way to get some calories in your system. And so, yeah, again, I highly recommend looking at this option. They're easy to grow. They're easy to store. There definitely can be a net positive when it comes to food acquisition in a shit hits the fan scenario. So there you go. Now let's go to number 3. Number 3, tomatoes. Tomatoes are a great food source. They're another one of those food sources that are they're resilient, especially if you get one that is good for your area, your crop zone. They usually have very large harvests, and it's a universally recognized food as well. It's rich in vitamins and minerals, which is super important. Another thing to consider, and I think this is where it makes a lot of its money, is its numerous off-grid storing options, right? I mean, you can do everything. You can dice them, you can make it into a paste, you can make it into a powder, you can make it into a sauce. There's so many different ways that you can store this in an off-grid setting to give you off-grid options for later. Tomatoes are key ingredients in numerous meals, whether we're talking about pastas, soups, Mexican dishes, pizza, etc. It's really hard to find, especially for us, it's hard to find meals that we can make that we really like that don't require tomato in some regards, because it's literally in everything. Like I said, I mean, it's everything from salsa to pizza, your Mexican dishes, soups. It's literally in everything. So that's something to consider, especially the fact that it's so easy. They're so easy to grow, and they can have such a big harvest. The ability to take this food and then store it for later is huge. I mean, just think about it from an off-grid point of view. I think a lot of people do preserve and have pastas. That they have. Most preppers, I would imagine, have a large stockpile of pastas that they have dried. So you just have dried pasta that's waiting there. So wouldn't it be nice in a situation where it's in the dead of winter, it's snowing outside, you can grab the pasta you have and you can take jars of tomato sauce that you have already preserved, and then you go outside, you grab a rabbit or you grab an elk that you bagged this year, and you're able to make yourself a nice hearty pasta. I mean, to me that's great comfort food. The ability to do that is outstanding, and especially the fact since you grew it yourself. Another thing to think about is, what did we just talk about earlier? In the first one we talked about apples, right? Apple cider vinegar. Well, you take a tomato paste, you take apple cider vinegar, maybe add a little bit of salt in there, and guess what you have? The best homemade organic ketchup you ever made. And so now you have the ability to make your own ketchup, and you have your ability to flavor your foods. So again, this is just another thing to think about. Tomatoes are a universal meal. They're rich in micro and macro nutrients, and they have many applications, especially with the food that you probably already have on hand. So another great thing to think about, another great option for you guys. Now let's move on to number 4. All right, number 4. So number 4 is going to be onions, okay? Onions are nutrient dense, so they're loaded with a lot of micro, macronutrients. They're loaded with antioxidants too, which is great for cancer fighting. They're shown to decrease bone loss, so that's going to be, I mean, that's huge. We're talking about an off-grid situation without real wall where we're engaged in strenuous activity. Yeah, being able to fight bone loss is great. It has a lot of antibacterial properties, so I want to talk about that for a second, because that's going to be really good for a couple things. Number 1, it's going to be really good in aiding in digestion, so that's great. Number 2, what a lot of people don't realize is onions are great for oral health because they have antibacterial, antimicrobial properties to them. So just by chewing on the bacteria, it's good for just by chewing on the onion, it's good for your mouth and oral care. So it'll help prevent gum disease, and it'll help kill all the bacterial stuff that you got going on in your mouth, which again is going to be huge in an off-grid scenario where you can't just buy toothpaste whenever you want. So the ability to have something that can actively help in oral care, tooth care, gum care, it's huge. Next is, onions are universally paired with most meals. They're a great flavor enhancer, okay? And that's important because, for example, let me give you a great example. I love steak. I'm going to make no qualms about it. I like steak. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to cut up some onions, put that on a nice lamb chop, or, store and preserve this? I can dehydrate it down and grind it into a powder. So now I have onion powder that I can use in soups. I can use on meat. I can use on salads or whatever it is that I'm wanting to eat. So, onions are huge because they do provide great flavor enhancement. They do have a lot of macro and micro nutrient benefits to them. They have a lot of good antioxidants, cancer fighting. That's really good. Another thing that they're high in is folate, which helps aid in depression and aids in sleep and appetite. So again, there's a lot of good stuff when it comes to onions. And here's another thing that people may not know. Onions is a good bug repellent. You can put it on your skin if you're in a sick place where it's going to be, you have problems with mosquitoes and other bugs. Onions are a good bug repellent. And here's something that you may not know. It's also great for removing rust. So if you want to try it, I highly recommend you trying it. But you can take an onion and you can rub it against, for example, let's say a knife that has rust to it, or any metal object that has rust to it, and it will take the rust off. So not only do you have a great food source, not only do you have a great flavor enhancing commodity, but you also have the ability to do work around the homestead, around your farm, around your house, etc. So it's an intrinsic value, goes beyond just food. So highly consider, you guys. Think about that. Implore you to take on onions possibly as part of one of your off-grid menu items. All right, let's move on to number 5. Number 5, Moringa. Okay, Moringa is a superfood. It's a superfood, often called a miracle food. Moringa is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most unique and beneficial foods that you and I could ever grow. So, number 1, Moringa is a tree. So that gives you a great, excellent food source. It's a resilient off-grid food option. Again, like I said, I have my biases towards the trees, the shrubs, the bushes, because I have this tree that produces food and I don't have to do anything. I just have to let the tree be a tree. So again, you're not going to find a better off-grid resilient option than a tree. So Moringa is a great food source. Number 2, it's a superfood. Let me just tell you about the leaves for a second. The leaves have 7 times the vitamin C of oranges, 4 times the calcium of milk, 4 times the vitamin A of carrots, 2 times the protein of yogurt, 3 times the potassium of bananas, and they're also rich in iron, zinc, and B vitamins. The Moringa leaf alone contains 90 nutrients that benefit the body. So, you're talking about literally a super green there. The leaves can be eaten in a salad as a lettuce or spinach substitute. So you can literally take the leaves and make your own salad. And this would be a super salad. You've already seen the nutrient breakdowns, and I highly encourage you guys to Google the Moringa tree and see all the many beneficial factors and, the facts on this thing, because it's amazing. Moringa is known to support brain function, it's anti-inflammatory, cancer fighting. And here's another thing. The Moringa seeds can be used for water purification and currently still being used for water purification in Africa. So just example of what it is. So when you have a tree, it's going to produce leaves. It's also going to produce seeds, right? So let's say that, we're in, like I said, this whole point of this video is an off-grid without rule of law scenario. So you have these large IBC totes or these large water storage containers. And let's say you need a way to filter the water. Let's say you found a river or a stream or a pond. You found a way to fill this water up, but you need you need to do some kind of filtration on it. If you were to take the leaves and throw them into that container, it is going to drag all the particulate, bacteria, all that stuff to the very bottom of that water storage unit, water storage container that can be easily separated from the rest of the water. And this is something that, like I said, it's been used in Africa for years. So the fact that the seeds have that ability to filter water in that way just puts the moringa on a whole nother level. So again, highly encourage you to take a look at it, especially the fact that it's a resilient off-grid option because it's a tree. There's zero work that needs to be done, minimum inputs on your part. So again, I can go on and on about the moringa, but you know, I remember the first time I got my first moringa tree back in 2012. Amazing. So think about it. All right, let's go to number 6. All right, number 6, squash. Now this is going to be kind of a controversial one, but nonetheless, I highly recommend anybody, especially beginners. Squash is an amazing thing to grow. So number 1, hands down, I think the biggest thing that squash has going for it from a survival standpoint, from an off-grid standpoint, without a rule of law standpoint, it is a prolific harvester. Okay, with minimum inputs, you're going to get more squash than you care to eat, which is amazing. If the biggest problem that I have in an off-grid situation is I produce too much of something, what more could you ask for? Squash is one of those plants that just it will grow. Even if you try to kill it, it will grow. So as far as being a prolific harvester, I don't think, in all honesty, you're going to find a better plant that's better at growing in adverse conditions and grow more than you want than squash. So hands down, prolific. Number 2, nutrient dense. I mean, it has vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin B6. It has lots of minerals like niacin, thiamine, folate, pantothenic acid, calcium, iron. It's abundant. I mean, it even has copper, manganese, magnesium, and potassium. So it is a wonder food in that regard. Again, the folate will help with depression, aids in sleep and appetite. It's also shown to decrease bone loss. It's known to help fight against diabetes. It's easy to store. It's universally paired with most foods. And here's another thing that's great that a lot of people don't realize. It is a great, and it's known especially in a lot of vegan circles, it's known as a great pasta substitute. So if you had a little pasta tool, you can make your own homemade pasta at home. You know, get your little pasta tool, cut it into little tiny or long strands of pasta, however you like your pasta. You can dehydrate it, and now you have your own off-grid pasta that you can use. And guess what? You're already growing tomatoes, right? So now you have your ability to make homemade pasta off-grid whenever you need it. So again, squash is just a resilient, nutrient dense food that, again, you will grow more than you want. And so what do you do with it? Once what do you do with it? Again, you can easily store it. You can make your own pasta out of it. You can pickle it because you grow apples already, right? There's so many different options with the squash. Again, I highly recommend that you at least look into it, and I implore you to see if it's something for your off-grid garden. Let's move on to number 7. Number 7, beans. I knew you knew this was coming. Now I'm going to leave this pretty categorically open, right? Because depending on where you're at in this country, depending on where you're at in the world, beans could mean different things to you. There's different types of beans, everything from kidney beans, pinto beans, black beans, navy beans. So there are so many different kinds of beans that, and depending on the growing area that you're in, I left it open. But we're pretty much going to get the same kinds of things. They're the same attributes with beans are pretty universal. Number 1, that would be great protein, right? So depending on the kind of bean that you're getting, you're talking about anywhere between 20 grams to 24 grams, 25 grams of protein. So beans are a great protein source, especially for being plant-based. Your plant-based options they're pretty high in protein. Number two, they are fairly easy to grow. They're not very difficult. Granted that you have the right bean for the right climate, right crop zone. Number three, they're universally paired with most meals. I would say that most people recognize beans as being a staple food, so it's something that it's highly recognizable, and that will actually give you some commodity options in of itself, just because it is recognized as a staple. It is nutrient dense, and again, it's easy to store off grid. So for those people that are looking for a protein option, beans are a great option for you. I mean, in fact, they probably will be one of your only plant-based options realistically. Pretty much anything that you're going to be able to, that you would put meat with, you can substitute for beans. Again, everybody's going to be in a different situation, but as far as what they are and what they do, beans are great in that regard. So it's something to definitely think about. It's a way to diverse that protein portfolio there on your homestead or in your garden, so to speak. So there you have it. Now let's go to number 8. Number 8, the tea bush. And yes, it is exactly what you think it is. It is a bush that produces leaves, and when those leaves are dried, they give you tea. And what a lot of people don't realize is the variance of tea, like between black tea, green tea, that's just really depending on how long the leaves are dried for and how you dry them out, etc. So I want you to think about this for a second. There is plants, right? Because coffee, same thing, plant. There are plants out there that produce caffeine. Okay. So I want you to think about, you were in a without rule of law situation or grid down situation, off grid situation for about a year. You made it through the first winter. It's springtime, and you go to your first swap meet or your first little trading post or whatever, and you have 2 jars in your hand. You lift them over your head, and you just proclaim caffeine. Better have an arm protection detailed, because everybody's going to be coming after you. But yes, no, in fact, again, there are bushes, and again, I have biases towards bushes because it is a way to get a renewable product off grid with minimum input. There's nothing you have to do except keep that freaking bush alive, keep that tree alive, and if you can do that, it will produce a harvest for you every single year. And if that harvest is abundance of all you can ingest caffeine, well, I'd say you're doing pretty damn well. So again, source of caffeine, need I say more? But I will. All right. Also, great source of antioxidants, cancer fighting properties. Again, easily stored, right? You literally take the leaves, you dry them out, and you can store them. It doesn't get much easier than that. Renewable source, and most importantly, it is an absolute commodity. Again, the ability to go anywhere and say you have caffeine when all supply lines have ceased to exist. I mean, what? Honestly, honest question. What better commodity could you want? All right, number 9. Number 9, cucumbers. Again, cucumbers are another one of those prolific harvesters. With minimum input, you'll have more cucumbers than probably you'll know what to do with. Now, I love cucumbers, so I don't think I could ever grow too many cucumbers. But again, it is an eye of the beholder. So cucumbers, again, prolific harvesters. Another thing to think about is using it as a companion plant. Okay, so cucumbers in a garden will prevent fungus, and also they're good at repelling raccoons. Raccoons do not like cucumbers. They don't like the smell of cucumbers. They don't like growing cucumbers. Raccoons will stay away from cucumbers. So from a companion plant perspective, cucumbers give you some options. Cucumbers are quick growing. You can harvest them in less than 2 months from planting. They mature very, very quickly. They have some of the best cancer fighting properties to them, so keep that in mind. They have a lot of good cancer fighting properties there. And last but certainly not least, you guys are already growing apples. You guys already have vinegar, pickles, all the off-grid pickles you could possibly want. Again, I don't think I need to say more on that. So cucumbers, implore you to look at it, think about it. see if it's right for you. Number 10, or last but certainly not least, plant that you should grow now. Again, number 10, last but certainly not least, blackberries. And for this conversation, there's really two varieties. You have the thorn blackberries that have thorns on them, and then you have thornless blackberries. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to be talking about the thorn blackberry. So, number one, it's a great food source. Again, reasonably an off-grid option because it's a bush. So, its ability, and not only is it a bush, it's considered a pestilence in certain areas. It will take over. So you have literally a bush that you might have to manage because it will produce too much. So keep that in mind. Blackberries are very nutrient dense, have a lot of good cancer fighting properties, antioxidant properties. That's great. Number 3, it gives you a lot of alcoholic options, right? So that gives you commodity options. So it can very easily be turned into a cider or a wine. And again, that'll give you some options. It's commonly used in herbal tea called leaf tea. So you can take the leaves and you can make herbal teas and different things out of them. It's very herbal. And so, yeah, teas, tonics, elixirs, stuff like that historically have been what they've been used for. So something to keep in mind. And also, since you're already growing the tea bush, you can now mix it and you can have different types of tea. So it's something else to keep in mind. It's also known as antidiarrheal, which can be important, especially in an off-grid situation where you don't have, access to a normal medicine cabinet anymore because supply line chains have been completely devastated years back. Here's another great thing. It is the main ingredient in pemmican. Pemmican is known as a world historic survival food. Commonly used by outdoorsmen as a survival food when out in the bush. So this is something that very wise and talented outdoorsmen will look for as a food source. It's commonly used and preserved into jams. So this is another commodity option. You can take it and you can preserve it down for long-term storage as a jam. And last but certainly not least, historically, the thorned blackberry bush has been used as an off-grid perimeter fence. And it works very well, especially out here with our thickets. You can see that people have taken the blackberry bush and they put it on old fencing, for example, to use almost as a backstop or as a trellis. And it completely has taken over that fence and basically created its own fence. And you will not see cows try to push through it. You will not see sheep and goats try to push through it because it grows in so thick. So in this place where shit hits the fan and we have no ability to get fencing, the blackberry bush, again, is a pestilence and it can be manually manipulated to create your own fencing. It will give you your own perimeter border. So again, that's also an amazing thing to look at, the ability to have, a thorned fencing free of charge that produces food for you. I mean, come on, could you really ask for more? So there you have it. Those are 10 crops that I would implore you to look at. If I had to choose, you can only grow 10 crops now until the end of time. These would be the 10 that I would pick because of their attributes, not only as food but also as a commodity. Is going to be good. It's hard to beat. They're very hard to beat, and so that's why for us, these will be definitely 10 that we want to have growing at all times. So there you have it. Hope this video was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, leave in the comment section below. I look forward to seeing your comments. Tell me what you think about my 10. Let me know what your 10 are. Let me know what your 10 are and why. Well, I hope this was helpful for you guys. And as always, long live the Republic.